All right, today's topic is breakfast. Like, who decided we need a whole special meal with its own rules, its own foods, and somehow its own guilt?
And its own personality. Breakfast is the only meal where people will argue that a donut is not breakfast, but a stack of pancakes with syrup is somehow a responsible choice.
See, that right there is why I wanted to do this episode. Coffee is basically glued to breakfast in most people's heads, and I want to know why.
The short answer is routine, work, culture, and marketing. The longer answer is humans have always eaten in the morning sometimes, but breakfast as we picture it is a moving target that changed a lot over time.
So let's start with the most basic question. Did humans always eat breakfast?
People have eaten morning food forever, but not always the way we think of breakfast. The idea of a named morning meal that everyone agrees you should eat, that's way newer.
So who started breakfast is kind of a trick question.
Exactly. Nobody invented eating after waking up, but societies invented norms around it. When it happens, who does it, whether it's respectable, and what foods count.
Okay, so where do we see early morning meals?
Ancient cultures had them. Romans had a morning meal called ientaculum, often bread, cheese, olives, nuts, and leftovers. And it wasn't a cute brunch thing. It was practical.
So basically, here's a chunk of food, go do your day.
Pretty much, and in a lot of societies, breakfast was about work. If you're going to be in a field or on your feet all day, you eat something early, if you can.
So why does breakfast feel so official now?
Because over time it became tied to status and schedule. And here's a wild part. In parts of Europe for long stretches, 2 meals a day was the norm, one midday and one in the evening. Breakfast wasn't always treated like a required, respected meal.
Wait, so skipping breakfast used to be normal?
For some groups and periods, yes. In medieval and early modern Europe, sources often focus on the main meals, and breakfast as a fashionable, talked-about meal can be strangely absent, especially in upper-class writing. Working people still ate earlier, but it wasn't always a thing socially.
That's hilarious. So breakfast was basically too unimportant to mention, unless you were poor or doing manual labor.
Or sick, or a kid, or an older person. A lot of the time, breakfast reads like the meal you eat because your body needs it, not because society is applauding you for it.
Okay, hit me with the word origin. Because breakfast sounds like it's literally describing what it is.
It is. Breakfast comes from the idea of breaking the fast from overnight. In English, it shows up in the mid-1400s, and there's an older Old English term for a morning meal too.
So the word is basically a description. You were fasting, now you're not.
Yep. Which makes the whole thing feel less like a meal category and more like a biological reset button.
Now here's where it gets fun. Meal times shifted over centuries, right?
Big time. One of the major shifts in Europe is that what people called dinner moved later in the day over time. As societies changed, especially with urban work patterns, the big meal slid toward evening, and that leaves more room for a morning meal to become standard.
So breakfast becomes more important when your day becomes more scheduled.
Exactly. Industrialization matters here. When people are commuting, working timed shifts, and can't just eat when the work allows, breakfast becomes a planned fuel stop.
So that's the structural side. Now we have to talk about the emotional side. Breakfast feels comforting.
That's the ritual part. Morning is when people want something steady. Breakfast is a small promise. I'm awake, I'm human, I'm starting, and coffee slides into that perfectly.
All right, coffee. When does coffee start attaching itself to breakfast?
Coffee becomes big in Europe in the 1600s. In England, coffee houses pop up mid-17th century, and coffee becomes part of a new caffeine culture alongside tea and chocolate.
And caffeine does something that breakfast basically wants. It sharpens the edges.
Yes, and this is a key reason coffee wins culturally. It's a stimulant in a world where a lot of everyday drinks were alcoholic or low-grade alcoholic because water safety wasn't consistent. Coffee is the let's be awake drink.
That sounds dramatic, but I know it's true. People really did drink alcohol in the morning.
They did. There's a famous line from coffee historian Mark Pendergrast, quoted by History.com. Morning coffee replaced beer soup for breakfast. That's not just a funny phrase. It's describing a real cultural swing towards sobriety and productivity.
So coffee becomes part of breakfast because breakfast becomes part of work, and coffee is the tool.
That's a big chunk of it. Coffee fits the rhythm of modern life, fast to drink, repeatable, portable, socially acceptable, and it tells your brain, we are online now.
Now give me an obscure fun fact about early caffeine culture. Something weird.
Samuel Pepys, the diary guy, records trying tea for the first time in 1660. It's one of those, you can see the moment a new habit enters a culture things.
That's cool, like a timestamp on the start of the caffeine era.
Exactly. Another weird one. In 1674, there's an anonymous pamphlet called The Women's Petition Against Coffee, complaining about coffeehouse culture and claiming coffee was drying and enfeebling. It's real.
People have been arguing about coffee online since before the internet.
The original comment section was a pamphlet.
Okay, so coffee attaches itself to breakfast culturally. But breakfast itself also gets invented in modern form, right?
Yes. Especially in the US, breakfast becomes its own branded category. Before that, breakfast could look like yesterday's dinner, or meat, or leftovers. It wasn't always light foods.
And then cereal shows up like, hi, I am breakfast now.
Pretty much. Late 1800s into early 1900s, cereal becomes a huge change, partly tied to health reform movements and partly tied to convenience. The Kellogg story is central there.
So breakfast becomes a product aisle.
Yes. And then marketing turns it into a moral instruction.
You mean breakfast is the most important meal of the day?
Exactly. That phrase and the whole idea of breakfast as the essential meal got a big boost from advertising and industry influence, especially as cereal companies grew.
So we've got industrial schedules, new products, new marketing, and coffee just rides shotgun.
Coffee benefits from all of it. Coffee pairs with the quick breakfast. It pairs with the big breakfast. It pairs with I'm late. It pairs with I have 5 minutes of peace. And it pairs with the idea that morning is a reset.
Now let's be honest, a lot of people don't actually want breakfast. They want coffee.
Yes, coffee becomes the minimum viable morning ritual. Even people who don't eat still often do coffee because it feels like starting.
And it's social. You can offer someone coffee without offering them like a full meal.
Right? Coffee is the most polite form of hospitality. It's also the most flexible. You can sip it while doing everything else.
Now, I want to connect this to the Bilge Brew Show without turning into an ad.
Easy. We're literally a coffee company, so we pay attention to how people use coffee. Breakfast is the most common coffee moment, not because it's magical, but because it's repeatable.
Coffee you can depend on, right? Same time, same ritual.
Exactly. Breakfast is like the watch change of the day. You're handing off sleep mode to work mode. Coffee is the handoff tool.
So if breakfast is partly tradition and partly modern schedule, then coffee is basically the modern symbol of I'm up.
Yes. And the interesting part is that coffee also changes what breakfast is. People will eat less food if they have coffee. People will delay breakfast because coffee makes them feel fine. People will pick breakfast foods that go with coffee.
Like pastries, which is suspiciously convenient for pastry businesses.
The breakfast ecosystem is real.
Okay, one more angle. Why does coffee belong at breakfast from a taste perspective?
Because breakfast foods are often carb-heavy, salty, or sweet. Toast, eggs, bacon, pastries, pancakes. Coffee's bitterness and acidity cut through richness, and its aroma plays well with toasted flavors. It's like a built-in palate reset.
So coffee isn't just habit. It's a flavor tool.
Yep. And culturally, it became the adult morning drink. Even if you don't love it at first, the ritual trains you.
Now, if we zoom way out, who started breakfast becomes nobody. But modern society heavily shaped it.
Exactly. Humans start eating when they wake up because they're human. But modern breakfast, the foods, the timing, the importance, the slogans, gets built by work patterns, health movements, and marketing.
And coffee becomes breakfast's best friend because it does exactly what modern mornings demand.
Yes, alertness, ritual, comfort, identity. It's a tiny ceremony that says, I'm ready.
All right, wrap it up in one clean takeaway for listeners.
Breakfast isn't one invention. It's a pile of habits that got standardized over time. Coffee became part of breakfast because it fit changing work schedules, replaced older morning drinks, and offered a repeatable, comforting way to start the day.
And if someone's listening thinking, so do I need breakfast?
You need what works for your body and your day. But if coffee is your anchor habit, make it intentional. Decent water, decent beans, consistent method. That's the difference between morning survival and morning actually feels good.
That's the most Bilge Brew sentence you've ever said without selling anything.
Good. That was the goal.